Wizzle by William Steig, illustrated by Quentin Blake. Wizzle the witch was busy biting her nails. "Beatrice," she said, "I'm bored stiff." "Well, you've been perched on your behind for so long that you're stinking the place up," said the parrot. "Now go make somebody suffer." "But who?" said Wizzle, "and where?" "Frimp Farm," yapped Beatrice. "It's a Frimpy family, all right. There's DeWitt Frimp, Fred Frimp, and Fred's wife, Florence Frimp." Wizzle took her parrot's advice and turned herself into a common housefly and zizzed on over to Frimp Farm to check it out incognito. Snoozing and snoring, with a fly swatter in his fist, was DeWitt Frimp. He detested every breed of fly, especially Musca domestica. And since he wasn't up to milking cows anymore, he had plenty of time for swatting. Wizzle lit on his bald plate and acted like a genuine fly. She sailed down his nose, crossed his cheek, and tickled his ear with her tiny feet. DeWitt sprang up, swishing his swatter wherever he could swish it, 3 times missing the witch by only a hair. Resolved on revenge, Wizzle zoomed out the window, determined to cook up a really nasty plan. "Wizzle," she said to herself, "that bald-headed fuddy-dud with his crazy swatter darn near did me in. He'll be getting his all right, and double quick." Once she got home, Wizzle hurled her body onto her bed and stared at the ceiling as if she dared it to try staring back at her. Suddenly, she got up and began pacing the floor in her snakeskin slippers. "Beatrice," said the witch, "listen. That old Foggy keeps his swatter in his left hand, so he's a lefty. I'm going to turn myself into a left-handed work glove and make sure he wears me constantly. Then I'll give him the works." "That's the way, Wizzle," Beatrice squawked. "Make him sizzle." Before sunrise the next day, Wizzle was down near the Frimp mailbox, sulking in the bushes. When the sun showed up, so did DeWitt, a fly swatter in his left hand and a letter in his right. Presto! What had been a witch became a glove. After posting his letter, DeWitt spotted it. "Frimp, my man, it's your lucky day," he exclaimed, and he had traipsed back home with a happy harpy on his hand. DeWitt took to wearing his new glove all the time, except when he washed or shaved, or had to wind his watch or pick his nose. He wore it at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, as if that was normal behavior. Wizzle gave him time to get used to her, but then she got busy, and DeWitt soon found himself losing his war on flies. He'd swing and he'd swat, and he'd hear the swatter swoosh, but Wizzle just jerked his arm a tad to this side or a tad to that side. No soap. This made DeWitt dippy sometimes. He let out a war cry and chased the little devils all over the house, hitting everything in his sight except flies. "Are you all right, Pops?" Florence Frimp finally asked. "I'm fine as wine," DeWitt lied. "Baloney," said Fred Frimp. "You've been acting nutty ever since you found that glove." "Nutty? If anyone around here's nutty, it's you. Anyway, I won't stop wearing it." "Please, Pop," said Florence, "just take it off for one day and see what happens." "No way, and that's that," he said. But they kept pestering him until the witch lost patience and decided to teach Fred and Florence to mind their own business. She began by giving them unbearable itches in unexpected places, and the harder they scratched, the more they itched. At dinner that night, she made their meatballs explode, and their water spurt up like fountains. And in the morning, she made the whole house tremble and shake so that the boards it was built with cried for help. Making his sad way over the bridge that afternoon, having witnessed the weird things that were happening, DeWitt finally saw the light. Fred and Florence must be right. The glove had to be the culprit. He wrenched it from his wrist and flung it into the river. Wizzle the glove began squirming and stretching, and right there in the water began turning into the hateful hag she'd always been. And oh, how Wizzle hated getting wet. She'd never had a bath since she was a helpless baby, and all she'd ever washed since then was her two horrible hands. She thrashed, gurgled, sputtered, and spat, and then she started to sink. DeWitt stared in disbelief. But repulsive as Wizzle was, DeWitt couldn't bear to see a fellow creature drowning. He dived right in, and holding the disgusting witch in his arms, started towing her ashore. Halfway there, he was startled to see that this witch, instead of looking sinister, was blushing, and smiling with gratitude into his wide-open eyes. Wizzle had been so thoroughly cleansed by the crystal clear water that all of her vicious nastiness was whirled away downstream. Instead of running for his life as soon as they hit the riverbank, DeWitt found himself hugging a surprisingly sweet old lady. Needless to say, Wizzle and DeWitt fell completely in love and wound up an old married couple who stayed together on the farm. Wizzle was never bored again. Sometimes she and DeWitt even played cards with Fred and Florence, and Beatrice would kibitz at their games. "I guess I'll have to stay here with these humdrum humans," a parrot figured. "It'll be a whole new hayride." The end.